Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall. And this week, for whatever reason, for the last about 15 minutes, the you know that song, I honestly don't even remember what song it's from, but there's a lyric that's I sneezed on the beat and the beat got sicker.
Yeah.
That's just been running on loop in my head for the past like 15, 20 minutes. And
Okay.
I don't have there's no music with it. There's no
It's just isolated vocals.
Yeah, it's just the rap vocal because it's over. Just like it's like the intro to a thing, so there's no music underneath it. It's like these are the things that start to make me feel kind of crazy sometimes. Like where I feel like I'm starting to lose it. It's like when something that small and short plays because it takes like a second and a half to say. That's been running in loop for unstopped for 20 minutes.
I believe that is a Nicki Minaj joint.
That would make sense.
I think. I can't remember, and I feel you. One of my favorite lines, and I'm not going to be able to. I want to say it's like fucking 2 Chainz. I probably got that wrong, but I've had something like that before, and for me, it's the real G's move in silence like lasagna, which is one of my personal favorites.
What does that even mean? I don't know.
I mean, I kind of get what it's saying, but I do think that it's maybe notorious for confusing people. But if you look at the word lasagna, right, you'll notice there's a G there. Now, when you say
silent G, oh my god,
lasagna,
yeah, okay.
You're not actually pronouncing the G. It's silent.
Hey, 2 Chainz, I'm sorry.
It's probably not.
You were smarter than me. Whoever it was. I didn't catch that. I mean, it's like that's like this is like this is the same kind of thing that I had where for the first couple years I saw the commercials, the slogan "Every kiss begins with K" didn't fully click with me, and then one day my mom made a joke about it, and not knowing that I hadn't understood, and it made me realize what the slogan was, and it was it was so weird to have something. It's like, oh, of course, what the fuck? How did I not?
Yeah,
I just never thought about it.
It's so just for clarity reasons, it is Lil Wayne, not 2 Chainz.
Lil Wayne,
that's my bad. I'm not super familiar with either of theirs discography, lyricography. But it is extremely funny to imagine you hearing "Every kiss begins with K" and just being like, "What the fuck are they talking about?"
I just
what the fuck does that mean?
I remember the jingle playing on commercial. Is K Jewelers nationwide, or is that only an Indiana thing?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Actually, that brings up something funny. I had to have a family. I had a family gathering recently. That required me to drive up to a faraway place in Illinois. Which that does also remind me, a little extra note here, that I may have new extended in-law family friends who start listening to this, maybe.
Okay.
So I'm gonna
the family try out an episode thing, which I've had many a family member do over the course of this podcast. Very few stick with it in any way, shape, or form. Right. But if any of my family are listening, shouts out to you. I love you. Shoot me a text and let me know if you hear this.
Shouts out. I will say, I do, Niall, need you to be on your best behavior for this episode. Please don't say any of the disgusting shit that you're kind of,
that I'm known for.
You're known for saying all kinds of nasty shit, nasty sex stuff. It's fucking disgusting. Like, we have people. Who listen to the show,
I had a whole vor rant to go on this week.
That's,
so that is annoying. So you're gonna have to fill like 20 minutes.
And we will be editing the mention of vor, by the way, and mostly because I don't want the extremely normal people who discovered my show through my family and my in-laws to have to Google that.
True. Yeah.
But this leads me to my thing. While driving through Illinois, or maybe it was northern Indiana, I saw a billboard that said the phrase, it was for a casino.
Sick.
And it said, slots so loose, they need a chaperone. What does that
I've seen that billboard.
Mean? What does that mean?
Do you know what loose slots means?
I imagine loose slots means like you're more likely to get a good hit on a
the odds of winning are higher.
But what what the fuck does the other part mean? What are they?
You can't be trusted on your the slots are so loose they can't be trusted on their own. I'm assuming.
Okay. See, chaperone's one of those words that's eternally locked in my brain to being in school and having to go on trips with adults. Yeah. You know, like you go to Washington, D.C. and you have a chaperone. So I could not, for the fucking life of me, like math out what the fuck that was supposed to mean. I spent a good 15 minutes of my ride, which, is like almost 6 hours. So killing 15 minutes trying to figure out the slogan was kind of nice.
Honestly, a nice break. Yeah, sure.
But it really did, like, I was baffled. I didn't understand that. So thank you for clarifying, because that made no goddamn sense to me at all. Like,
look, hey, does anyone else have any slogans they need explained? Because I think that's what we're doing today.
I do have a couple questions about Grandpa's Cheese Barn and Hell is Real, but it's not so much an explanation thing that I need. But anyways.
We have a Grandpa's Cheese Barn cheese knife that, like, the blade it's cut out to say cheese.
Oh, okay. What? Wait, the blade itself?
Yeah, you know how like cheese knives for like soft cheese have like holes and stuff in the blade.
Yeah,
so
there's
that
probably a
caught.
fancy French name for it, but yes,
sure.
I know what you're talking about.
It's like that, but it says cheese.
Okay.
In the blade, and then the handle says Grandpa's Cheese Barn.
I was gonna say that's cute. It should have the knife say Grandpa and not cheese.
That would have been funnier. I would have. I bought it anyway, but I might have bought two if. True. It also has a little stabbing thing on the end of the blade to get the cheese to pick up. Jules says those kinds of knives are also good for slicing tomatoes.
Sure, yeah. We got a Jules Grandpa's Cheese Barn knife update.
She also informed me that K Jewelers is a national brand. So this is the thing, is like where I record this podcast is close to where Jules is usually hanging out. So sometimes I'll walk out from recording a podcast and she'll just be like, "What were you talking about?" Like and correct something that some story I was trying to tell or whatever. But
sure.
This time it was cheese knives.
We appreciate the info drop from Jules. But yes, I always assumed Grandpa's Cheese Barn was just a place that didn't exist and people didn't actually go to. But if you have knives from there, I have to assume it's a real place.
Oh, I've been. I did not get into... Have I told the joke of... The first time we drove past there, Jules and I jokingly told her that there's Grandma's wine cellar below Grandpa's Cheese Barn. And it's like a secret thing that you'll get access to. So
Grandma's got to have
see that.
Grandma was told by the doctor that she needed to cut back on her wine, only have one glass of wine a day. They didn't tell her what size.
Yeah,
she's got a big ass glass, like a jumbo cup. She's got to drink the wine to put up with Grandpa's cheese bullshit. For people who don't know, by the way, Grandpa's Cheese Barn is just a very ostentatious location that you see on the highway when you travel around the Midwest.
Yeah, it's in Ohio. It's about halfway between Indianapolis and Cleveland. From my estimation.
Yeah, I've seen it every time I drove to visit family in Ohio. So I always wondered, but
how many times have we talked about Grandpa's Cheese Barn on this podcast? I think it's happened before.
It's probably happened before. I don't know how many times. This is maybe the second time. Let's call it the second.
All right.
Grandpa's Cheese Barn. Sorry, I was trying to, I held back a second so-and-so has hit the Grandpa's Cheese Barn, but
we both thought it.
But anyways, last week on the show, or yes, this was last week, correct? So last episode, we talked about the Reed family. Specifically, we talked about Matthew Reed.
Did Matthew Reed ever went to Grandpa's Cheese Barn?
I hope so. I mean, he was an Indiana guy for some time. So there is a non-zero chance that Matthew Reed was like, oh, fuck, this UFO stuff's weighing heavily on me. I could go for some cheese right now.
Yeah.
What's a convenient location between Indianapolis and Ohio?
Got to cross the border, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go past the fireworks place and the warm glow candles
the
Christmas
warm glow
store.
Candles, yeah.
And an hour or two past that, you get to Grandpa's Cheese Barn.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So we heard Matthew Reed's side of this story about an abduction. If you want to know all about that, go listen to episode 459, I believe. It's an interesting story. He has his own personal UFO abduction experience in Indiana in 2009. But the shadow that hangs over Matt's story is cast by his brother, Thomas Reed. Matt seems to have shied away from the limelight, but soaking that up has been absolutely no problem for Thomas. So with Tom's side of the story, we get an entire extended universe surrounding the Reed family. Now, and I would like to be clear that like Matt does seem to believe that the things we're about to talk about happened. I watched him talk about it on that TV show that he was on. He does say, these things happened, but we're going to get to sort of the opaqueness of some of the not opaqueness, just like it's another one of those cases where you don't have a great timeline surrounding when the actual events took place outside of the events, right? Like you have the date of the events, but the things surrounding it, I would like to know more about when some of the things took place, basically.
Okay.
So Matt comes across a bit reserved and reluctant in this story. It's one of the things that we talked about last time about how it makes him seem at least a little bit more credible because he has refused the spotlight ever since, he had the TV show, which I guess, is a type of spotlight. But
yeah,
ever since around 2014, 2015, he has just sort of not been public at all.
He hasn't stayed the course in the limelight. Like some people try to.
And he does some sort of work for the Department of Defense. And I think the fact that he shied away also, it contrasts very heavily with his brother, who we're about to learn about. So with Thom, I actually spent a number of hours with this guy listening to his podcast and watching his Rumble live stream, which for those who don't know, Rumble is sort of like a right-wing alternative to Twitch TV.
Yeah, it's Chud Twitch.
So allow me to paint the picture of this man. He's got a shaved head. He's cleanly groomed. He's got the short gray beard. In the photos on his site, he's usually wearing big, stylish sunglasses. He's got a glittering earring in his left ear sometimes, and he's almost always wearing this gold chain necklace.
Hell yeah.
Sometimes he actually has a second pair of sunglasses dangling from the necklace. I've seen. He's a guy, he likes to wear open button shirts and suit jackets with jeans, clean white tennis shoes. everything from the presentation of his website to how he holds himself and dresses himself suggests a well-seasoned media personality. You can find him attending all kinds of paranormal or UFO cons. On his YouTube channel, he's interviewing personalities from the world of New Age ufology. Dean Haglund, who is the guy who played Ringo Langley of the Lone Gunman on the X-Files. Okay. So he talks to Langley, and he even interviews adult film stars and a BDSM mistress named Mistress Gidget.
This guy, these are the kinds of interviews you do if you want to go viral on TikTok.
Or on Rumble.
Well, yeah, there too. It's really funny. When did that like gold chain become synonymous with like grifter media personalities?
No idea. No,
because like it's popped up even in now that Mark Zuckerberg has a podcast. He has a gold chain, and
really?
it's like it's part of the uniform now, and it's really strange watching it. Just like all of a sudden, everyone has to have this fucking gold chain, and I don't get it.
That's so embarrassing for him. I really don't know, honestly. But it does. The guy you're picturing in your head is probably that guy. Like you get who I'm describing here. Oh, and yes, I did watch the interviews with the adult film star and the mistress. I don't want to be too judgy. The interview with the adult film star, he occasionally said some things that I'm thinking to myself, she's not gonna fuck you, bro. Okay. I remember he makes a really out of pocket comment because he has her on there. He has her on there to talk about vampires and werewolves. Which they're talking about maybe investigating that. And he's talking to her about something to do with like maybe vampires stalking this adult film star. And he says it would be such a waste for somebody to, destroy you, like a vampire to destroy you. Anyways, he makes very weird comments is the point I'm getting to. He makes this bizarre comment about her like, it would be a real waste if a vampire sucked you into the ground.
Yeah.
And killed you.
Right. He's trying to charm the fucking
I guess.
All of his guests.
I don't know.
Right.
He also runs a modeling agency. He's an interesting guy. I also watched an interview with a guy named David Altman who apparently did tour management for a few months for the band New Found Glory right before they got signed. And he admits that he didn't enjoy the job, so he moved to LA to work for record labels. And apparently the guy worked closely with Corey Feldman and ended up moving in with him and then managing his band. And he's a UFO guy.
With Corey Feldman's band, you probably have to be to get involved there.
That's probably true.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. Just such a fascinating intersecting of personalities. You can also find Thom interviewing music people. So he got the drummer from Blue Oyster Cult on there. He got Richard Finch, who's a guy from Casey and the Sunshine Band, and he got the guitarist from Quiet Riot. That's cool.
You gotta wonder, are these people all just like local to wherever he records his podcast?
I don't know. I think he might be in Boca Raton, so maybe.
Yeah, that would track. All right.
But he also, this one was the real kicker, and I listened to this whole episode. He interviews fucking Laura Eisenhower.
Oh.
And I watched that interview, and they discussed some of the most incomprehensible new age ascended consciousness light works type shit I've ever heard.
All right.
My main takeaway from that, though, is that I think that we personally have the pull to get Eisenhower on our show. So,
maybe. Do we want to?
That's a good question. I mean, it could be fun, but I don't know. I would be down, but I don't. She has a lot of interesting things to say. Is my nice way of putting it. Also, I gotta admit, I was pretty interested in the BDSM episode because I know very little about that subculture, and I learned a lot. So shouts out to Mistress Gidget. But fuck all of that. Because you have the vibe now. Let's talk about UFOs.
Hell yeah.
When Matt had his fateful 2009 encounter, he ended up reconnecting with his brother, Matt, to explore memories of their alien-riddled past. I sort of teased this last episode how Matt reached out to Thom because his mom said you should talk to him because he's interested in this stuff, and you have that history together, and they were estranged for a very long time. And then the 2009 incident happens, and Matt reaches out to Thom. And that seems to bring them back together, at least for a little bit. So they reconnect, and they're wanting to talk about this stuff. They have multiple encounters with aliens in their past, one of which Thom will make sure to let you know that one of those encounters was elevated to the attention of the United Nations. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, okay.
Now, here's this. I found it very hard to verify when these encounters were actually reported. In fact, I got the impression by the time I was done that not only do I not know exactly when they were reported, but they were decades after the fact.
Yeah.
So if something happened to them back in the 60s, like they say, they didn't tell anybody until later.
That really fits the vibe of what, like, this kind of person, it's always, they uncovered it later in life, or they remembered it, and like it something spurred it on, so like it probably, if I were to guess, all this stuff came out after the actual encounter that we were first talking about last episode, that like spurred on the memory of all this other stuff. And Thom was like, woohoo, let's go talk about all of these old UFO encounters that we've made up.
Yeah, I think...
Sorry, that I just remembered.
Well, I think that at least for Thom, the best I could tell was that somewhere in the late 80s is when he starts talking with somebody outside of the family about this stuff.
Okay.
I don't have an actual date. But I think that for Matt, it's a non-thing for him as an out-of-family discussion until the 2009 incident.
Gotcha.
So I could be wrong on that. I would love to be able to speak to one of them, preferably Matt, to get any verification on that, but I don't know. Thom actually adds clips of newspapers on his website, but they're very small, and it's hard. I had to do some digging to figure this out. So, because I couldn't confirm dates on the papers because the clippings that are on the site are very small, can't read it, no clue. Couldn't even tell if the clippings were about the Reed family. But I was able to actually track down an archive of one of the articles from 1967, which is when one of the events supposedly happened. And when I read it, so the article, it's March 10th, 1967. The article's titled, "Two Women Pursue UFO for a Distance of 10 Miles," and it's in the Berkshire Eagle. And I looked at this article, and it's the same year and the same day, I believe, as when they supposedly had their experience. But the article has absolutely nothing to do with the Reed family. Completely unrelated.
Gotcha.
Other than the fact that all it does is place a UFO sighting on the same night of when the Reeds claim they had their experiences.
Was the location at all similar?
It's in the same area, but
same area. Okay.
It's in the same like town, I want to say, but it's not outside of that. It doesn't really, I don't know. It doesn't have anything.
Yeah, they're jumping. He's kind of jumping onto a thing that was reported in the 60s.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So how did this all start? Well, for this, we're going to return to one of my main sources. That is the Indianapolis Monthly article that's titled "Alienated." And here's what they say. In 1966, the same year the family moved to the farm, which, again, that was in Sheffield, Massachusetts, the young brothers purportedly had their first extraterrestrial experience. For Thom, though only 6 years old at the time, the images are still vivid. Their bedroom was on the second floor of a big old farmhouse, and one night after they'd gone to bed, they had a strange feeling, he says. Scared, they wandered into the hall and saw two figures appear at the top of the stairs. Ghosts, the boys called them. The next thing Thom can recall, he and Matt were near a large exposed rock in an unfamiliar corner of the property.
To their right, through a clearing, they saw a wishbone-shaped tree and, out ahead of them, an enormous spaceship. It looked like a sleek gunmetal tortoiseshell. Thom also remembers being in a large room at the far end of which was a wide, curved screen. There were figures in the room, he says, humanoid but smaller. He sat at a bronze-colored table and watched in awe as a series of beautiful, captivating images flashed before him. One of them left a deep impression in his mind. The picture was of a broad, placid body of water, a lake maybe. Green hills rolled off into the distance on a glorious sunlit day. A weeping willow tree grew next to the water, illuminated from behind by a brilliant golden light. The leaves shimmered as if the tree were radiating. He felt at peace. When Thom got home from school the following day, he jumped on his horse, a little pinto named Thunder, and as though under a spell, rode a trail toward the corner of the farm he and his brother had visited the previous night. He'd never been to that part of the property before because his mother didn't allow the boys to go back there, saying it was too far from the house. But when he arrived, sure enough, there was the rock and the clearing and the wishbone tree exactly as he remembered them. So that's the first encounter.
Okay.
They seem to have blasted his brain with images for an unknown reason. There's no explanation.
They're trying to chill him out.
I get, yeah, that might be the case, that they were just trying to keep them at ease because, you know, they're scared children, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. The second encounter, the following year, 1967. Thom says he and his brother saw a bright light in their bedroom window. The nighttime insects went quiet and the air felt heavy. Suddenly, Thom was upside down and had the sensation that he was tumbling. Like when you're caught in an ocean wave, he says, in an undertow. He was no longer in the bedroom, but in a question mark-shaped hallway, and then in some cavernous interior space. He called out for his brother and turned around, and Matt was there, behind him. In another instant, Thom was being led through a door. To his right, he saw two figures take his brother into a separate passage. When the episode was over, Thom and Matt found themselves in the yard outside of the farmhouse, and their mother was looking for them. She scooped up Matt in her arms. "It's okay," she said. "They're gone." She took them into the kitchen and gave them each some orange juice and a baby aspirin. So, second encounter. They leave their bedrooms. He feels the sensation of being, like, tugged out of his room, and then he wakes up, and his mother is basically rescuing them.
And so she said they're gone, as if. So did she see something?
She is aware that they. Yes, she. So I don't know whether it's never explicit in this version of the story whether she sees anything.
Okay.
And I don't think they ever. I don't think I ever heard anything from her where she was saying that she saw entities or a UFO that night, but she recounts it as if she did see it. You know what I'm saying? Like she. Well, we're gonna have a little aside about her in a little bit, but I do think that at least on one of these nights in the 60s, she saw a UFO. So the implication here is that she knows that there's something kidnapping the kids from their bedroom.
Yeah.
And like they're gone does imply that, right? So
yeah. Okay.
Here's the third encounter. This is September 1969. Tom's 9 years old. Matt was 6. The two were in the family's station wagon heading toward the horse farm. Their mother was driving. Their grandmother sat in the front passenger seat. As Thom tells it, the group had been at a horseback riding competition he'd participated in that afternoon, and they stopped at a store on the way home to buy candy. As twilight fell, the wagon pulled away from the store. In the back seat, Thom slipped a 1-cent fireball into his brother's chubby paw. Just then, a cluster of lights appeared in the woods off to the left of the car, which veered off the road and rolled to a stop next to some railroad tracks. The nighttime insects, in full late summer chorus just moments before, went quiet, just as they had before Thom and Matt's second alleged alien encounter in 1967. Thom could hear gravel pinging against the undercarriage of the car as the tires left the pavement. It was like a barometric change in pressure, Thom says, like being in the middle of a hurricane. We all had this weird feeling, dead calm. Didn't hear a breeze. It was just silent and still. And then all of a sudden, there was a rush of crickets and katydids, and we all had a very weird memory of what had taken place. Nancy, that's the Reed's boy's mother, now sat in the passenger seat, and their grandmother was outside wandering in the road. Thom got her back into the car, and their mother took the wheel again. They rode in silence as the wagon wound along the dips and curves of the deserted country road, leading away from the village, the headlamps casting a roving spotlight on the tangled trees and fence rows. Thom has fragmented recollections of what took place after the station wagon stopped and before he woke. He remembers being in what seemed like a big, dark hangar and walking toward a figure engulfed in light at the far end of it. He remembers white walls, narrow corridors, and doors. He remembers a hand grabbing his arm and leading him down a passageway. The family rarely talked about what they saw, though Tom's grandmother once confessed that she'd seen what looked like a, quote, flying strip mall. But not long after the final incident, Nancy sold the farm. I don't think we ever felt safe there again, she says, and they all resettled in Connecticut. So,
I'm sorry, a flying strip mall?
Yeah, and yes, a flying strip mall is what she describes.
Huh. So that would be a big fucker. Okay.
Yeah, presumably. So it would be after heading back to Connecticut that Nancy would end up marrying Howard Reed, who, if we talked about in the previous episode, that's the stepdad who stepped up. You know what I mean? He's the dad who stepped up. He's a lawyer. He's running for some sort of office. He has, I think, like a senator endorses him or something. So he's, when he steps into the family, he is going to pretty quickly become like an active politician in the area.
Gotcha.
Now, beyond what the Indianapolis Monthly says about these encounters, I was able to find a couple more details, some of which felt maybe like they're a little contradictory. So I found an article on a website called UFOcasebook.com. And
hell yeah.
You know that one. It has a note at the top that shows that the story was approved by Thom Reed himself, and his email is up there, and I strongly considered emailing him, but did not. The article was written by a paralegal named Debbie Kessler. So in the 1966 abduction, Kessler's article talks about how Thomas was taken first from the bedroom by the aliens, leaving Matt behind. So the way it gets talked about in the Indianapolis Monthly, it's like the children just vanish that night and aliens take them, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this version, she says that the article says that Matt is left behind. Thomas disappears. Thomas is the star of the show, by the way.
Yeah.
And Matt runs to go find his mother and grandmother, Marion, who was living with them at the time. And when Matt finds them in an adjacent room, he finds that they're both cataleptic. In other words, they're paralyzed or like frozen. They're in a frozen state. And the article attributes their catalepsy to the, quote, stillness in the air. So you know how they've been describing this feeling of like a barometric change in atmosphere that comes with these UFOs? They make the suggestion that change in atmosphere can maybe be what's paralyzing these two women in this moment. So
okay. I guess I can see that.
Yeah, it's implied at least. Matt tries to wake his mother, but it doesn't work. And then moments later, Nancy does regain consciousness and she runs with Matt to the kids' room. But right before Nancy's able to enter the room, she suddenly hears a, quote, loud screech and a door slamming sound. And when she looks down, Matthew is no longer there. So Marion, the grandmother, she's now presumably roused from her state. She stays behind at the house while Nancy hops on a horse and searches for the boys. The way it's told in the Indianapolis Monthly is like, oh, she found them outside in the house. In fact, that's what it's like in the TV show that they do, where they're just like they're outside by a tree somewhere on the farm. But here it's like she gets on a horse and she starts to like go pretty deep into the property and finds them somewhere off the Appalachian Trail. Huh. So this article, at the very least, makes it sound like they are much further away.
This is like she had to go hunting for them to try to find them in the woods. Okay.
Yes. When she finds the boys, they're about 15 feet apart from one another, and they were apparently just staring at each other in a shocked state. And this is when I believe that Matt makes the mention of seeing his brother during this abduction scenario and worrying that his brother is dead.
Okay.
So when the boys are brought back home, Thomas is basically unresponsive for a time. The women of the household give the boys water, they clean them up, and they wrap them in blankets. And this next part, I just want to read directly from the article. As they did so, Thom sat staring at a metal bottle top that Matthew was toying with, watching as it reacted strangely to his brother's touch. The adults watched over the boys until they dozed off on the living room sofas next to a fire. So, something I couldn't find a lot of information on is what that meant.
Yeah.
The very obvious implication is that whatever experience they went through gave Matthew some sort of probably electromagnetic residual thing that made the metal bottle top that he was playing with, quote, react strangely, but I don't know what that means. I don't have
really
more
know
details.
we don't really know what react strangely even
No.
what it did.
No.
Okay.
But the implications there, so you can just
Yeah.
digest the idea and go, Matt has electromagnetism powers now.
Okay.
So that's 1966. In the 1967 encounter, Kessler's article also gives us a couple more details. In this version, Marion's description of the flying strip mall, that's attributed to the UFO that the family saw from their car that night.
Okay.
In the Indianapolis Monthly, it's like it's a separate encounter. I don't know why, but that's how it reads. So the article claims that the family is able to reconstruct this encounter from their memory as best as they can. So Thom says that his account's always the most extreme and disturbing one. He recalls being in a large dark room and that there are these long, brightly lit hallways. And there's this like body encompassing chamber that he's in. And Thom is crying out for his brother. And this is where... So Thom then has a description of the beings. If you'll recall, Matt, when he has his abduction encounter in 2009, talks about alien beings that look like classic grays, basically, with like reptilian skin almost. So Thom talks about what these beings looked like. And it's weird. He talks about it on the Alien TV show, but it gets a brief mention here in one of these articles where he says that he describes them as being genetically engineered or manufactured intelligent insect-type beings that have some human characteristics, such as hands, and they would stand on 2 feet and vary from 3 to 5 feet in height.
Okay.
So
that's very specific.
Yeah, it's a far cry from your classic gray. When you watch the show, he like it's very Star Wars alien. It has a lot of shit going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just looks. It looks funny. Alien Mysteries Season 1, Episode 1, if you want to know what I'm talking about. But he describes, it's almost like mantis-like, but also it has... It's very mantis-like. Let's put it that way. But it's an insectoid being, according to him. And what I find strange is... I guess not strange, but I feel like when you get an especially specific and unique alien description in one of these stories... there's usually some more to jump off of. There's usually some more expanding on the lore type stuff that goes down with the people who claim to have experienced it, where you get more. Here it's just, they were insectoid aliens. Completely different.
Okay.
Which the fact that they're completely different could potentially run counter to the fact that Matt's aliens were grays, because the thing implicit in all of this is that the same aliens are visiting the Reed family because they have an interest in them.
Mm-hmm.
So, or I guess there could be competing aliens trying to get in on the same action that some other aliens got. It varies between completely vague, nondescript things to a couple specific aliens.
Yeah, it is. Aren't there certain stories where like, I think it's the reptilians are like, they use the Greys as like drone kind of things. Like
Yes.
there's like these two alien groups working together, but like one of them is the dominant one, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe there's maybe both types of aliens are involved. Who
Yeah,
knows?
it could be that they have enslaved the Greys, so there's a submissive Grey to the dominant reptilian type creature, and it could be a similar situation here. And that is something that clarified a lot for me when I watched the BDSM episode of Tom's podcast. So
Yeah, and it's good that you're finally understanding the levels of consent required for the BDSM relationship. You know?
well, I mean, I think if you're enslaving an entire alien race to do your bidding on Earth, that's one thing. But the way they were talking about it, yeah, look, Mistress Gadget, she has very clear rules about consent and keeping everything safe. And I just think that the reptilians have got a lot to learn from her.
Yeah.
So yeah, he sees some sort of weird insectoid thing. And it just is there, it's just a thing. Now, here's another thing that gets a bit sidelined by the abductions from the 60s. And doesn't get talked about very much. It gets just briefly mentioned in a couple different articles. Supposedly Nancy Reed had her own UFO alien encounter that predates all of this.
Oh, really? So that would be early.
Niall, it even predates the fucking Betty and Barney Hill case.
I was gonna
the
say.
most famous, known for being the first extraterrestrial abduction case, but the Reed family, they're heavyweight champs when it comes to alien abductions. They actually have in their family the real first near abduction, and I call it a near abduction because I think that's what it is. So this all supposedly happened back in 1954 at Moosehead Lake in Maine, which is, it's sort of remote. It's by the woods. I think it's on a lake. Nancy only ever speaks out about this incident on a radio show. And you can find the clip on Tom's YouTube channel, which is called UFO XPO Tom Reed. Nancy, according to her, she's awakened by a presence in the bedroom in the early hours of the morning when she's sleeping that night. And she says that she felt that her bed was, quote, surrounded by something. Terrified, she also suddenly found that she couldn't speak or call out for help. She was paralyzed. She felt as if she was being observed by, quote, a number of creatures, if you want to call it that, or people, whatever.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Those are her words exactly.
Your choice.
This experience went on until daybreak, by which point she was released. She never felt she was taken from the bed, but that there was simply something or somebody or a group of something or somebodies watching her. And that's all that happened.
Now, that feels like sleep paralysis.
I agree. It's one of it. Look, if we want to look at this incredibly cynically, and I think that it's only fair to sometimes be cynical about this stuff.
Yeah.
It reads like she had a sleep paralysis experience, and through her sons and their whole shit, the mythology became embedded in the sleep paralysis experience, retroactively, maybe. But if she says that there were aliens standing around her bed, sure. But when you listen to her talk about it, she says she can't describe what the things looked like, just that there were figures. But they have a tendency to call this in a small number of places online, the quote, first alien abduction, because, predates Betty and Barney Hill.
Oh, of course. You can't let Betty and Barney Hill have any.
No. As far as I can tell, the actual UFO mythology of the Reed family, I sort of brought this up before. It came about maybe in the 1980s, like mid to late 1980s, possibly in the 90s, but definitely in 2009. It becomes a very open thing in 2009 with Matt, but it was somewhere in the 80s that Tom's father Howard introduced Tom to a fellow attorney named Robert Bletchman. So with Howard running for office, the family decided to keep all these alien stories hush-hush so as to keep the campaign intact. According to the Reed family, Howard, after becoming their stepfather, was pretty quickly informed of all the bizarre things that had happened to the family, but he didn't want that information public because, last thing he wanted was for his opponent to be able to hold this over him. He didn't want it public, but at least not yet. So Bletchman, who's Howard's buddy, fellow attorney, would become Thom's personal attorney and UFO confidant. As it turns out, Bletchman was a very active member of MUFON. I actually found him in a journal, one of the MUFON journals, and it referred to him as the public relations for MUFON. Okay. And he was also at one time the state director for the Connecticut chapter, apparently. Interestingly, I found that credit for Bletchman in a 1989 MUFON journal where Bill Moore is writing an article titled MJ-12, an Open Letter, wherein he argues that he is not a government disinformation agent despite all the accusations being thrown at him at the moment. Now, since we may have new listeners this week, Bill Moore is a notorious he's notorious for admitting to working with shady government people to feed the UFO community bullshit, disinformation. This actually happened. And he actually would admit it at a 1989 MUFON conference. I believe that this article that I found him writing in, I believe that's actually the same year that Moore gave the infamous talk at the MUFON symposium where he admits to being a disinformation agent. And none of this really means anything, but I thought it was funny. And all it really means, really, is that Bletchman, being this involved in the community, would know about this stuff, right? Somebody as entrenched as him would know that there was this huge schism over Moore and the supposedly, the MJ-12 documents, which I think I want to say most people in the UFO community are aware are bullshit.
It's always interesting because there are these cases where you're like, well, were they reading sci-fi books at the time? Were they where were they getting their ideas?
Yeah.
So it's always interesting when you can find they were friends with a guy who worked for MUFON. It's okay, that's where they found it.
This is where I think Thom had to have gotten into the UFO stuff. I get the impression that it was that Howard, his stepfather, is my son's had these weird experiences apparently, or whatever they told Howard, and Howard said, hey, meet my friend who works for the Mutual UFO Network. I don't know. So anyways, I find it really interesting or funny or something that Bletchman is writing a review of Ryan Wood's book Magic Eyes Only in 2006. So the guy that Thom is working with here is writing this review where he's slamming UFO skeptics and then slightly suggests that the Majestic 12 documents are legitimate evidence. And this is so long after the fact that you should have dismissed this. Yeah, you should know by now. I would think a majority, or at least there's probably less people who understand that the Majestic 12 stuff is bullshit than I would hope.
Yeah,
in the UFO community.
You still see it. It still is out there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is
it's sort of like, how you're saying it's weird how there's a spook around every corner of a UFO thing. Mm-hmm. It's insane that Majestic 12 won't go away. It just keeps popping up in these stories. It won't go away. It's ridiculous. So Indianapolis Monthly suggests that Bletchman had worked with the big man, J. Allen Hynek of Project Blue Book, the U.S. government's investigation into UFOs in the 50s. And I can't tell you any details of what work they did together, but suffice to say, this is the type of guy Thom gets linked up with in the late 80s. Bletchman was, of course, very interested in the Reed family's stories. Howard had supposedly previously relayed some of these stories to Bletchman. All of this leads to Thom becoming a sort of UFO apprentice come journeyman to Bletchman. So through Bletchman, stories that quote-unquote corroborate the 1967 UFO are dredged up. These are the newspaper clips on Tom's site, I think. The ones that have nothing to do with the Reed family. They just place a UFO in the same area, seen by other people. So this relationship is maintained over the UFO stuff, and then the UN stuff happens. So in the early 90s, Bletchman calls Thom into his office, and he tells him, this is the big one. The United Nations had approved a motion to set up an international clearinghouse for UFO reports, but little had come of it. Now, though, Mohammed Ramadan, president of the UN's Parapsychology Society, was planning a UFO conference, and Bletchman was one of the organizers. He wanted to present the Reed family case at the United Nations, and Howard and Thom consented. On October 2nd, 1992, in the Dag Hammarskjöld Auditorium, sorry about that, I don't know how to pronounce that, the UN held its symposium on extraterrestrial intelligence and human future. The event was a watershed moment in ufology, imprinting a kind of official legitimacy on the field.
Okay.
Also, there's some bullshit about how the state of Connecticut, said the 1969 Berkshire UFO incident, the one that it's called the Berkshire UFO incident more broadly outside of the Reed family's involvement in it. They have some official writing somewhere in like a local, I want to say museum, that says this case is official and important, and they got a big official document or something like that. It's another one of those things
with a seal and everything.
I honestly don't know. I haven't seen it. I'll be totally honest. I also don't care. But like it's one of those things, like this whole thing about we're going to take your story to the UN, which is kind of what happened. That Thom points to as like, see, this is one of the most important UFO cases in history, right? As far as I know, I don't think really anything came of the UN symposium on this stuff. I don't see it. All I know is that this is one of the cases that was brought to this symposium that was led by a parapsychologist. So what that means, I don't fucking know. I don't know if that matters that much. Maybe it does. Maybe it's extremely important, but I don't know. Now, here's where things do get a little strange, sort of. October 2nd, 2006, 14 years to the day after the UN symposium. Howard Reed, Matt and Tom's stepfather, 56 years old, died in Yale New Haven Hospital. He had been diagnosed with Legionnaire's disease, a relatively rare bacterial infection only a week earlier, one of the two people in his hometown of West Haven who caught the illness. It was not... sorry, this is from the article. It was not clear how Reed, a cancer survivor, contracted the disease, according to an Associated Press article printed after his death. And Connecticut state health officials consulted the Centers for Disease Control because, quote, it was unusual for one town to have two cases of Legionnaire's disease at the same time. Matt visited Howard's school the next day. By the way, Howard was, I think, a principal at a school locally at this time. Matt visited Howard's school the next day to break the news that his stepfather had passed. The Connecticut Post reported that he expressed frustration with the apparent lack of response to his father's case by local and state health officials and by the school system, and that, according to Matt, when Bridgeport education officials contacted him about his stepfather's illness, quote, the gist of the message was, please do not speak to the press. Howard's death was a sudden, heartbreaking loss for Thom and Matt. Not only had he stepped in and made their family whole when it was struggling, he was a sober-minded man who believed their claims and didn't judge. Now he was gone. The mystery surrounding the source of the Legionella bacteria that had infected him and what Matt perceived as reluctance on the part of government officials to talk about it would weigh more and more heavily on the brothers in the years ahead.
Did they spawn a conspiracy out of this?
Very mildly, but yes.
Okay.
Right. The Indianapolis Monthly article goes on to explain how Thom believes there are shadowy antagonists whose goal is to get people to stop talking about UFOs. Classic Men in Black stuff. Thom tells them a story about how he was hanging out with Steve Price, who's one of the guys who was hanging out with Travis Walton on the night of Walton's infamous abduction. That's the case that was made famous in the movie Fire in the Sky. They were eating wings in Knoxville together and discussing how in the lead up of it to a UFO conference that they were planning, both of their homes were burglarized. And then Thom tells another story about how he was working with a paralegal around 2013 that was working on documentation and official stuff on his case. It doesn't directly say it, but I imagine that this is Debbie Kessler, whose article received approval from Thom in 2013. Thom claims that they were driving together when they noticed a white SUV following them. It then apparently pulled up beside them and then forced them into oncoming traffic.
Oh,
So
okay.
maybe a Men in Black driving that SUV.
Yeah.
Then Thom describes an encounter with basically a Man in Black, sort of, or like a Man in Blue. Let's call it that.
Sure.
Thom says that he was at home and he gets a ring at his doorbell and he looks outside and he sees a man wearing a blue blazer and khaki, quote, Kmart manager pants and aviator sunglasses. Quote, I open the door and I get this right in my face, says Thom, holding out the palm of his hand. This badge, I couldn't even read it. It was so close to my face. He said, sit down. Thom then proceeds to ask this guy, you know, what's going on? Why are you here? And this agent person says, I'll be asking the questions. And this guy supposedly asked Thom about his brother, his stepfather, his mother, and all this stuff. He asks them if they're good with computers, if he ever travels internationally. He mentions some names and asks Thom if he knows them. And then he never gives a reason for why he's visiting them. But he leaves a card. And Thom pulls this card out and gives it to the guy he's talking to for the Indianapolis Monthly. And the name on it is Adam Robinson, Keypoint Government Solutions, Contract Investigator, U.S. Office of Personnel Management, Federal Investigative Services. And the guy talking to him in this article says, well, can I call this guy and find out why this happened? And it says that Thom goes white and he says, quote, I would not contact him, not to mention I'm not even supposed to talk about it. Do not call him. 3 people have already died around this case. And I'm not saying that would happen to you, but I would not want to stir up anything. So, this...
That... But can you at least like check to see if the guy's actually is like real?
Well, the guy who wrote this article looks up Keypoint. And he finds that it says on their website that they're a leading provider of investigative and risk mitigation services to government organizations. And they leave a voicemail, and they get a call back a few minutes later from somebody named Scott Kobasic, who's the program director at Keypoint. And Kobasic says to him, quote, he's not going to be able to discuss anything about any of the cases that he's worked. Once someone is investigated, it's all protected under the Privacy Act. And then the guy who wrote this article, the journalist says, do you guys ever investigate subjects who have claimed to have had extraterrestrial encounters? And they tell him never. So who knows? I mean, who knows?
I mean, yeah, they could be lying. They could be whatever. It could be.
Thom could just
that it
randomly
wasn't about
have the
UFO
card for a
stuff.
completely unrelated reason, right? Like,
Yeah, he went to some conference one time and picked it up at a securities conference. Who knows? Like, yeah.
But it is stuff like this that Thom will bring up that has him convinced that their stepfather was murdered by these shadowy agents. There are things in this article that the Reeds say never made it into newspaper articles about the outbreak of Legionnaire's disease that killed their stepdad. And that would be stuff like Howard being in the hospital. So Howard's in the hospital. Matt goes to the school to pick up Howard's laptop. And when he gets the laptop, he discovers that its contents have been wiped, supposedly.
Okay.
And then Thom claims that there are rumors, and I love the layers of getting away from the truth we are here. But
yeah, deniability.
Yeah, he says that there are rumors that he had heard that government officials had found, quote, small shards of glass in the window air conditioner, as though a vial had been broken there, and also a virus they couldn't identify, which, under magnification, looked like red luminous sticks, some microbe not found in nature.
Okay, that's rumors about possible evidence that they may be found that about an alien disease.
Tom's word that there were rumors that there was an alien
Tom's word
disease.
that I'm saying, like, there's, but that's, I'm just making sure I understand what he's saying.
Yes,
here.
it's
So,
an X-Files episode.
Yeah, that's God. Wow. Like I was excited last week because it sounded like there was going to be a bunch of like, wild lore this week, and it's delivered. Like Tom seems like he's got it all figured out.
I mean,
I believe everything he says, and I love his gold chain. It's really it looks great on him.
Now I would recommend you specifically to look this guy up and learn a little bit about this man because he's fascinating. And listener at home, he's easy to find. If you look up like Thom Reed UFO, you'll find him. But I do believe I have his website here. It is Thom Reed Official, THOMREED official.com. So go ahead and check him out. You can learn there's so much that I could get into with this guy. We have a little bit more to get to, but he's a character. So he did say that 3 people died over this case.
Yes.
So less than 2 years after Howard's passing, Bletchman, their point of contact with MUFON from all those years ago, would die of cancer. Also, I just want to point out that Howard, before he contracted Legionnaires, apparently, by the way, I did look it up and find that there was an article that confirms that, yes, this man did contract Legionnaires.
Okay. So that
is true.
Factual. Okay.
There's also Michael Buckner, who is a hypnotherapist from Knoxville. And so this guy's a hypnotherapist. He had treated Tom's son. And after receiving treatment, Buckner would write a letter to Thom saying, "Hey, your boy, very smart. And, by the way, he may have intuitive or psychic ability."
Of course.
And so Thom is, when his son comes up in conversation on his podcasts and stuff, he will say, "My boy, the psychic boy who I have." Basically, he suggests that his boy might be psychic, that he can do things that other people can't. Oh, and you better believe that Thom claims that his son has also had contact with extraterrestrials.
Of course, has to.
But here's the thing. Buckner, this hypnotherapist who tested his son, passed away unexpectedly in 2010.
Oh, so that seems shady.
It's shady. Don't know what happened. So 3 dead supposedly surrounding this case. There's a really bizarre bit in here where in 2014, Thom comes to Brownsburg, Indiana to do his own little investigation of Matt's case, but he's filming this documentary with this woman named Lori Wagner. And what's interesting is they invite Matt Reed to come and join in on this documentary. Matt declines. So Thom, of course, is into the documentary idea, and Wagner brings along a friend of hers. This is another hypnotherapist named Yvonne Smith. We would know Yvonne Smith from Alien Encounters from New Tomorrowland, the bizarre Disney program from 1995. So she was a talking head on there who was presumably giving the hypnotherapist's point of view on UFO stuff. So he's not only a couple degrees from Bill Moore and Rick Doty, he's a couple degrees from Alien Encounters from New Tomorrowland. Fantastic stuff, I gotta say.
That was really, really good one.
So with this crew, Thom would speak to the Avon doctor who treated Matt for his puncture wound scars. In the first episode, we talked about how he discovered he had what appeared to be puncture wounds in his abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
And the Indianapolis article describes how this doctor, Dr. James Mozillo, creator of Firefox, just kidding, that's not actually true. He describes Matt as having, he gets the impression that Matt believes what happened to him. And that he did talk to him about UFOs, supposedly.
Okay.
And then the article says that apparently shortly after the interview for the documentary, Dr. Mozillo and Thom got into an argument about, quote, the feasibility of using wormholes for long-distance space travel.
As you're wont to do. That's just very standard topics. We talk about it all the time.
It's very it's a classic argument to have. So here's the elephant in the room. If the three older men who had various illnesses like cancer were actually murdered using secret diseases, why would somebody do that? The article specifically says Thom believes that it's because they were prominent, respectable men who weren't crackpots. And I love how he says that they weren't crackpots because it basically says the entire rest of a majority of the rest of the UFO community is crackpot weirdos, right? Just totally.
Yeah, if you are still alive and into UFO stuff, then you are a crackpot because you're not saying anything dangerous.
But I guess Thom must have some special protection because he's still out there talking to porn stars and talking to mistresses, and I don't know.
Sure.
Who knows why he's still alive, I guess. But he says that all these men had uncovered quote compelling evidence of extraterrestrial visitors. So they died because they were smart, prominent, and not insane, and they knew the truth about UFOs. Classic. There's also one more very odd tidbit that I don't totally know what to do with, where it's revealed that Thom and his family have an O-negative blood type.
Okay.
So Wendy Piatek, a Hoosier woman with a history of UFO experiences that they meet up with during the filming of this documentary, explains to Thom that his blood type is one of the rarest in the world. So rare, in fact, she tells him that the government wants to manufacture it for use on the battlefield.
Okay.
This fact about the O-negative blood, the universal donor thing, is brought up occasionally in these stories and is never really elaborated on. But I think it's just one of those things that you're already reading about UFOs and aliens visiting people on Earth and shady government agents visiting these people. I think it's just meant to hint that either aliens or secretive government agents have an interest in the family because of it. Whether it's aliens or governments, I guess depends on the observer, like a sort of quantum blood type thing. But like I think that you're supposed to look at that and go, oh, the aliens are interested because they have O-negative blood for some reason.
Yeah. Okay. So that's why they're so special. And also, okay, sure. Why not? Like,
Yeah.
It's legitimately, it is a slightly better explanation than a lot of people would give for something like that. Because there's at least a reason, but also it's still probably
What I find kind of stupid about it, though, is that they don't ever really I never hear Thom talk about it. He'll mention it sometimes. I maybe have missed a time when he's talked about it. I didn't have time to go through every episode of his show, but I couldn't really find him saying, I theorize. Like, I couldn't get him to even theorize about why his blood type is relevant to the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just is said, and then it's of course,
you just
blood type.
You just
sure.
it's a thing that is supposed to make you go, oh, aliens, blood type, interesting. Ooh. So I don't know. This brings us to the end of Thom's story. The man is still on the UFO and paranormal circuit to this day. Like I said, he runs a modeling agency called Miami Models. He makes appearances at cons, runs his own convention called UFO Expo based in Roswell. I really love it because on the UFO Expo page, there's like a blurb that says, don't go to this other expo called UFO Expo. They're the false one. And he has so many things on his show, too, about drama between personalities in the community. It's fantastic. The
hot goss.
Yeah. So he has an expo that's based in Roswell, New Mexico. He covers all this shit on his Rumble stream. He claims to have had a near-death experience in Boca Raton, Florida, back in 2005. And this experience, as far as I can tell, when it has come up in his discussions, it's sort of pushed him towards a little more spiritual side of UFOs and extraterrestrials. So when he's talking with Eisenhower, he's talking about souls and shit and ascended consciousness crap. There's also this whole thing where Thom has been fighting over a monument to his UFO experience in Sheffield. So not totally worth getting into, but I found a thing where on his website, it'll say, like, here's a link to the Wikipedia article on the case, but it's inaccurate. And when you go through it, you find out that, here, I'll just read this to you. A park was found. This is from Wikipedia. A park was founded in 2015 on the banks of the Housatonic River by the town of Sheffield, where Thom Reed's off-world incident occurred, to commemorate the incident. A 5,000-pound granite monument was placed in the park from 2015 until 2019, when it was replaced by a sign which reads, "On behalf of the citizens of Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I am pleased to confer upon you this governor's citation in recognition of the off-world incident on September 1st, 1969, which engaged the Reed family, which has been established. Your dedicated service to this incident was factually upheld, founded, and deemed historically significant and true by means of Massachusetts historians. The records highlighting the historic event are now officially part of the Great Barrington, Massachusetts Historical Society's collection and your recent induction into Massachusetts history." So that's what it says on it. The plaque was signed in error by then Governor Charlie Baker after a persistent Reed asked the governor's staff to put Baker's signature on it, a Baker spokesman said. The town of Sheffield has been involved in a dispute with a private landowner near the park over the location and return of the granite monument for several years. And then on an Atlas Obscura article, there are 2 updates that's just talking about Reed and his case. And it says, update June 2019. The monument was removed from the site by the town of Sheffield after squabbles between Reed and the town's select board over the legality of the monument. Reed is currently pursuing his legal options. Update July 2021. The granite monument has been replaced with a sign from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, signed in by Governor Charlie Baker. So he's still fighting over that, apparently.
Yeah, I hope he gets justice.
Yeah.
You know, I think he deserves they really deserve.
It also
the 5,000 pound monument.
it got defaced by graffiti at a certain point too, and they had to replace it.
Sure.
He also has a whole section about how there's this guy, this reporter named Cowgill, who, quote, knowingly and willingly slandered him. That's front and center on the front page of his website.
Of course. Yeah.
And you can find links to his podcast, his live stream, his 2024 book titled Inducted, Thom Reed's Berkshire's UFO. The book has not yet been released. The last thing I saw of Matt was a photo shared by Thom on his Twitter account in 2016.
Okay.
And that's the Reed family.
Wow. All right. So Thom is still active out there. He's still on these streets. Matt has receded into the background and maybe just wants a normal life, or maybe is working as a spook now. We kind of left it at that last week.
I don't know. I would love to talk to him.
Yeah.
But he seems like he might be difficult to get to nowadays.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, and you know, Thom, he's a real personality, and he, I think, is making some money off of being that personality. Good for him, I guess. I don't know, man. I feel like you seem to be doing well enough with your modeling gig. You get to pull, you know, all those interesting people on your podcast. So I don't know.
Some would say that the fact that he started a podcast would mean that he's not doing that well with his modeling agency. But that's you know, that's purely, I don't want to get put on his website as slandering him or anything.
I hate to say it, but with this episode, we are on his website as slanderers for sure. You know, look, Thom, if you're listening to this, we're a comedy podcast who talk about interesting stories from UFO shit. And it's all in good fun, but I do think that you're a liar and a freak. And I'm saying that on my comedy podcast. And hey, email me, let me know. I want to talk to your brother. I mean, I'll talk to both of you, frankly, if you're willing to keep it civil, after all that smear job I just did. So anyways, Nyla, are you ready for a big question?
Oh, I'm always ready.
Okay. If you could dedicate a monument to a park in our hometown, and I think we're thinking of the same park.
Mm-hmm.
You dedicate any UFO incident from history, what one would it be and why?
I mean, like, it is funny to dedicate a UFO thing that didn't take place there.
That's true.
To this thing, but we're going to walk past that for the. Yeah. So I am probably going to go with Hopkinsville Goblins.
Okay.
Just because I like the like a bunch of little guys up on the roof. You know, maybe there's like even like a log cabin as part of the
Yes,
the
monument is a
that you,
log
like,
cabin,
get,
a
that,
recreation of the cabin they were in.
yeah, that has like copper or like pewter fucking Hopkinsville goblins like around the chimney and shit.
We could get some
I think it'd be great.
Imagineers on this project and have them develop Hopkinsville goblin alien animatronics.
Yeah, we'll
interact
get a
with.
full experience.
That would
here.
be so
This
sick.
is the fully life-size interactive Hopkinsville Goblin experience located in Columbus, Indiana. That's fantastic.
For no reason.
Please do this.
I would love to go to a Hopkinsville goblin animatronic recreation for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great.
For me, I think that we need a monument. It is in Columbus, Indiana, which is, again, very weird and doesn't make a lot of sense. But I don't give a shit because this thing needs a monument no matter where it goes. We're making a monument to the pancake bakers from space and the farmer who met them. We can at least relate as Indiana people with a farmer, right? But this is a farmer who met space aliens that were Italian looking, who came down in their ship and gave him the shittiest looking pancake of all time. He gave them a jug of water, I think. And it was a beautiful cultural exchange. And I think we need to really memorialize it. So I'm thinking what we could do is just pick up as a memorial, a token of memorial.
Mm-hmm.
How about we just go find out? I don't remember the guy's name who experienced that, but we'll find it. We'll find that out. We'll look him up. We'll find out where his gravestone is. Just relocate the grave to the middle of the park for people to check out. So on the one hand, you get to learn about it. We'll etch something in it. It probably says something like loving father, beautiful farmer, caring husband, and also space aliens gave. We'll add and space aliens gave him a pancake on this date, 1960, whatever. And we had a cultural exchange with Italian-looking aliens. And then, I think that that's just something that's missing in a lot of our beautiful parks, and that's graves. Memento mori, they say.
Yeah, sure. You want graves. That's when you first brought up that incident, I thought that you were gonna have like a small IHOP on the site. That is
would
like
be good too.
You get a little pancake.
Tell you what, we'll get an IHOP there, and it'll be UFO themed, right?
Hopkinsville goblins.
Hopkinsville goblins. Maybe we could put these memorials next to each other.
Yeah.
You could go directly from the animatronic experience that was Imagineered into the Hopkinsville goblins, and inside you get to learn about the pancake bakers from space, and his gravestone is sitting at one of the booths, and you can sit with it and take pictures with it. And maybe because we've sort of disrupted the whole grave situation anyways, we'll just prop his casket up and people can like look at the body and stuff. Like probably bones. He's probably, if he's still alive, that's really problematic for my idea, but I think he's probably dead.
And we will seal that in like an acrylic container so that it doesn't.
Yes.
Because I think that would put the smell of that would put people off their pancakes.
Well, sure.
And we need this IHOP to thrive to fund all this stuff.
Niall, I'm a reasonable man. I didn't want there to be like a stink. I want it to be an interactive experience. Mm-hmm. And so, we'll put like, what's the shit that they make? You know, how we want, we'll put some sort of shit in there that like freezes his corpse in a clear plastic so everybody can see that and eat their pancakes next to his body. So that's my idea.
The weirdest weirdest fucking breakfast experience of your life.
I mean, look, it is what we just described is pretty weird, but I would absolutely love to do it.
Be involved in making it or go there?
Go there. Okay. Somebody else is going to make this. I'm just going to give them money. Somebody's going to give me, we'll get we'll get some state, Indiana state, like the governor, and we'll be like, hey, we'll be really persistent until he hands over enough money to make this happen.
Here's the thing. IHOP is obviously in desperate need of like to figure out what they're going to do to like get interest, because they did IHOB and that didn't work.
We're doing the work for them.
So I think honestly tying into local cryptid and alien lore in the places around the country and making kind of, It gives you a reason to visit all the IHOPs, to see all of the memorabilia and all of the lore about America's UFO and cryptid history.
That is, I agree. We will probably have to tell the representatives of IHOP that the Hopkinsville Goblins and the Pancake Bakers from Mars or from Space Farmer are locals to the area.
Yeah.
Because then
they're not going to do a lot
this
of research.
here?
They'll hire us to do this for them.
Yeah. Anyways, great idea. We fucking knocked another one out of the park.
Yeah.
Nice job. That's a great idea.
All right. So you want to take care of some business?
Yeah.
All right. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're almost certainly there.
We're on Blue Sky at It Gets Weird, trying to migrate from Twitter because Twitter sucks. We're also on twitch.tv/It Gets Weird. I've been out of commission for a couple weeks, out of town, sick, but we're going to get back to it. Elden Ring Night Rain is coming, and you know Colin and I have got to get a piece of that action. So if you want to catch us playing that, that will be over there, twitch.tv/It Gets Weird. Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. We actually do have an email sitting in our inbox, but I knew this episode was going to go long, so we'll get to you next time, dear listener. But if you want to email us, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com is a great way to do that. There's no other ways either, but that would be a great way to do it. Just, let us know how we should address you. Send us a cool story or some thoughts on an episode or something, and we might read it on the show if it's good. Now, most importantly, you're going to want to check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $1 tier. We have a $2 tier. We have a $5 tier. At the $1 tier, you're giving us a tip. You don't get anything out of it. You're just saying, hey, like your show, here's $1. But if you want bonus content, you can get that at the $2 tier and the $5 tier. At $2, we have It Gets Weird TV. Niall and I just started X-Files Season 3, Episode 1, as voted on by the listeners who have donated to the Patreon. We're going to talk X-Files for a while now. Going to be a lot of fun. So check it out. But at the $5 tier, you get World of Weird. We actually just had a great special episode that had Jules on. So if you want cool bonus content where Niall and I are talking about whatever the fuck we want to talk about, and then maybe Jules shows up sometimes, I mean, that's a fucking steal at $5. Yeah. I'll tell you. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday on your own private Patreon feed. And you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out, chatting with all our listeners about all kinds of stuff, UFOs, goblins, cryptids, whatever you want. If you can't donate, though, please, we need you to tell friends about this show. Word of mouth is how we spread. We're spread orally, which is a thing that I learned about watching some of the sexually charged podcasts of this guy's show for this week. So like that, we need you to tell everybody about our show. So tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird Podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the show. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.